There is a product sitting in your kitchen right now that the billion-dollar pesticide industry genuinely does not want you to think twice about. It costs less than $1. It has been sitting on your pantry shelf for years, and it does the same job, sometimes a better job than fungicide sprays, pest drenches, weed killers, and soil amendments that garden centers are charging you 10, 15, $20 a bottle for. The chemical companies figured out what this stuff can do decades ago. They did not tell you. They just repackaged the science, slapped a brand name on it, and put it on a shelf next to the cash register. I am talking about plain baking soda, sodium bicarbonate. Before you scroll past, I want you to stay with me because the seventh point on this list is the one that is going to completely change the way you look at your tomato plants. And I do not want you to miss it. Drop your US state or your USDA hardiness zone in the comments right now. Let me see where this community is gardening across America, and then let us get into it. Let me tell you something I have learned in over 25 years of getting my hands dirty in gardens from coast to coast. The most effective gardening solutions are almost never the most expensive ones. The garden center knows this. The chemical company knows this. The expensive brand name spray in the bright orange bottle, that stuff is mostly water, a synthetic compound, and a marketing budget. And yet every spring, good hardworking American homeowners walk in, load up a cart, spend $60, $70, $100 on sprays and powders and pellets, and by August half those plants are still sick. The fungus is still spreading, and the slugs are still helping themselves to your hostas. I want to be straight with you. That is not your fault. You were never given the real information. This video is about giving you that information today for free, and it starts with one of the most overlooked substances in the history of home gardening, baking soda. Let us go through 9 powerful, practical, science-backed ways to put it to work in your yard, your beds, your containers, and even your tool shed. And I want you to walk away from this video knowing exactly what to mix, exactly how to apply it, and exactly why it works. Because understanding the why is what separates a gardener who gets results from a gardener who keeps spending money. Prevent and control fungal diseases. I want to start here because this is the one that costs American gardeners the most money every single season without them even realizing it. Fungal disease, powdery mildew, black spot, leaf blight, early blight, late blight. If you have grown tomatoes, roses, squash, cucumbers, or zinnias, you have dealt with at least one of these. And the first thing most people do when they see that white dusty coating spreading across their squash leaves or those black spots appearing on the rose canes is they go buy a fungicide, which is exactly what the chemical companies want you to do. Here is what they are not telling you. Baking soda is what we call a fungostatic agent. That is a clinical term that simply means it stops fungal spores from germinating and spreading. It does not just mask the problem, it interrupts the biology of how fungus grows. The way it works is straightforward and elegant. Fungal spores, the microscopic seeds of these diseases, require a specific surface environment to take hold. They prefer slightly acidic to neutral conditions on the leaf surface. When you apply a baking soda solution to your plants, it raises the pH of that surface, creating an alkaline environment where those spores simply cannot gain a foothold. They cannot germinate, they cannot spread, the existing infection slows, and new infections do not start. Now here is the formula I want you to write down because this is not something you need to measure by feel. Get yourself a clean 1-gallon sprayer, add 1 TBSP of plain baking soda, add 1 TBSP of horticultural oil. You can also use neem oil or even vegetable oil in a pinch. Then add a few drops of liquid dish soap or Castile soap. Fill the rest with clean water and mix it gently. The soap and oil are not optional additions here. They are what we call surfactants. Without them, the baking soda solution beads off the leaf like water off a duck. The soap breaks the surface tension, and the oil helps the whole mixture cling to the foliage so it stays active long enough to do its job. Spray the entire plant, top of the leaves and bottom of the leaves both. The underside of the leaf is where fungal spores are most active, and most people miss it completely. Do this in the early morning or late afternoon, never in the heat of the midday sun because wet leaves under intense sun can scorch. Repeat every 7 to 14 days during the growing season and reapply after any heavy rain. This is not a one-and-done treatment. It is a prevention and maintenance protocol, and it costs you pennies per application instead of $50 per bottle. For powdery mildew specifically, this approach works best as an early intervention. Once you see that white powder spreading across your zucchini or your bee balm, that is the moment to spray. Do not wait. Early treatment is everything with fungal disease because once it gets ahead of you, containment becomes your only option. Manage and deter garden pests. Nobody told you this, and I want to be very clear about that because this is the kind of information that would genuinely put a dent in the pest control industry's profits if it got out more widely. Baking soda is an effective non-toxic pest management tool for several of the most frustrating garden invaders, and the mechanism behind it is biology, not marketing. Let us start with slugs and snails because if you are growing hostas, lettuce, strawberries, or any kind of leafy green in a moist climate, these are your primary nighttime enemies. Slugs are soft-bodied mollusks. Their entire physical structure depends on moisture. Baking soda is hygroscopic, meaning it pulls moisture aggressively out of whatever it contacts. When you sprinkle dry baking soda directly on a slug, you are essentially desiccating it from the outside in. The high sodium content disrupts the osmotic balance in its body, drawing the water out of its cells, and it dies quickly. You can also create a protective barrier ring of dry baking soda around the base of individual plants. When slugs try to cross that ring at night, they are stopped cold. Now for ants and cockroaches, and yes, cockroaches in the garden are a real problem in many parts of the country, especially in warm, humid climates across the South. I want you to listen carefully because this trick is genuinely effective. Mix equal parts baking soda and powdered sugar. That is your bait. The powdered sugar is the lure. Ants and cockroaches are drawn to the sugar, and they bring it back to the colony. When they ingest the baking soda, it reacts with the acid in their digestive systems and produces carbon dioxide gas. That gas builds up internally, and there is no biological release mechanism for insects. It is fatal. Place this mixture in bottle caps or small containers wherever you see ant trails or roach activity. Keep it dry. Replace it after rain. For aphids and spider mites, those tiny, soft-bodied insects that cluster on new growth and suck the life out of your plants. The baking soda spray formula I described in the first point doubles as your pest control solution. Mix 1 TBSP of baking soda, 1 TBSP of Castile soap or vegetable oil into 1 QT of water. Spray directly onto the affected areas, concentrating on the undersides of leaves where aphid colonies hide. The alkaline solution disrupts their body chemistry, and the soap component works as a contact insecticide, suffocating them by blocking their breathing pores. Here is the important word of caution I want to give you, and I give this warning because I want you to succeed, not just feel empowered. Always test any baking soda spray on a few leaves first. Wait 24 to 48 hours. Look for any sign of yellowing, browning, or leaf curl before you spray the entire plant. Some plants are more sensitive to sodium than others. Test first, then treat. Now let me stop here for a second because if you are watching this video and you are not yet subscribed, I want to ask you something honestly. Where else are you getting this information? Think about that. Because nobody at your local garden center is going to walk up you and say, hey, that $20 pest spray you are reaching for, you can make something just as effective with a box of baking soda from the grocery store. That conversation is never going to happen because that store exists to sell product. This channel exists for an entirely different reason. It exists to give you the real information, the practical, actionable, money-saving information that the industry profits from keeping vague. If this video is giving you value today, hit that subscribe button right now. It is free and it is the single best decision you can make to keep this kind of content coming into your feed every week. Eliminate compost bin odors. A healthy compost pile should not smell like a problem. If it does, if you are getting that sharp, eye-watering smell of ammonia or that sour, vinegary odor that makes you hold your breath every time you walk past the bin, your pile has a chemistry problem and baking soda is part of the solution. Let me explain what is happening. When organic material breaks down too fast or when you have an excess of nitrogen-rich material. Think food scraps, grass clippings, fresh manure, without enough carbon-rich material like dry leaves or straw to balance it. Your pile becomes acidic. That acidic environment produces those offensive gases. It also creates exactly the conditions that fungus gnats love. If you have ever seen those tiny flies hovering around your compost bin in clouds, that is why. They are drawn to the odor of fast decay in acidic wet conditions. Sprinkling a small amount of baking soda over the surface of your compost pile will neutralize those acidic conditions and significantly reduce odor. And when the smell drops, the gnat population drops with it because you have removed one of their primary attractants. I want to be clear, this is not a replacement for good compost management practices. You still need to turn the pile. You still need to balance your greens and browns. But as an immediate practical odor management tool, while you work on improving the pile's overall chemistry, a light dusting of baking soda is effective, cheap, and completely safe for the finished compost. Do not overdo it. A light, even sprinkling is all you need. You are not trying to turn your compost pile alkaline. You are just neutralizing the immediate acidic spike on the surface. This is about managing the environment, not replacing the whole system. Perform a DIY soil pH test. I cannot tell you how many gardeners have come to me frustrated that their plants just will not thrive. The leaves are yellowing, the growth is stunted, or the blooms are sparse. And when I ask them what their soil pH is, they look at me like I asked them to do calculus. Nobody told them. Nobody explained why it matters. And they have been spending money on fertilizer and compost amendments for years, trying to fix a problem at the surface when the real problem is underground. Soil pH is the master variable in your garden. It controls whether your plants can physically access the nutrients in the soil. A plant sitting in soil that is too acidic cannot absorb iron, calcium, or magnesium the way it needs to, even if those nutrients are present in abundance. You can pour all the fertilizer you want into acidic soil and still get sick, yellowing plants because the chemistry is not right for absorption. Now, you can buy a soil pH testing kit, and I recommend doing that for a precise reading. But if you want a quick rough check right now, here is the baking soda method. Go out to your garden bed, dig up a small sample of soil, maybe 2 TBSP worth from about 4 to 6 in below the surface where the root zone lives. Put it in a small container, add just enough distilled water to make a slurry. Then sprinkle a good pinch of baking soda over the top of the wet soil. Watch what happens. If the mixture starts to bubble and fizz, sometimes aggressively, sometimes gently, that baking soda, which is a base, is reacting with the hydrogen ions that indicate high acidity. The fizzing is that chemical reaction happening in real time. The stronger the fizz, the more acidic your soil. If nothing happens, your soil is either neutral or alkaline. This is not a precise instrument, but it is a free, immediate indication that tells you whether you need to investigate further. And that is valuable information you can act on today without spending a dime. Eradicate weeds naturally. Let me tell you something about weed killers. The active ingredient in most commercial, non-selective herbicides works by disrupting specific biological processes in plant cells. The chemical companies spend billions of dollars developing, patenting, and marketing these compounds. And baking soda, used correctly in the right situations, can achieve a remarkably similar outcome for about 1 cent per application. Here is the science. Baking soda has a high sodium content. When sodium comes into contact with plant tissue in concentrated form, it pulls moisture out of the cells through a process called osmotic dehydration. The plant cannot replace that moisture fast enough. Cell walls collapse. The tissue dies. For weeds growing in sidewalk cracks, in gravel paths, between patio pavers, and in driveways where you absolutely do not want any vegetation at all, this is an effective, completely chemical-free solution. Here is the method. Wet the weeds first with water so they are damp and the baking soda has something to stick to. Then sprinkle a thick, generous layer of dry baking soda directly onto the leaves and crowd it around the base of the plant. Do this on a dry day when rain is not expected for at least 48 hours so the sodium has time to work. You will typically start to see wilting and browning within 24 hours. Repeat as needed for stubborn weeds. Now, I need to give you the critical warning here, and I want you to hear this clearly. Baking soda is non-selective. It does not know the difference between a weed and a desirable plant, and the sodium it deposits can linger in the soil and build up over time. Do not use this method in your garden beds near the plants you are trying to grow. Do not use it on your lawn. Reserve it strictly for hardscape areas, concrete, gravel, pavers where you want zero plant life. Used that way, it is safe, effective, and free. Used indiscriminately, it will cause collateral damage you will regret. If you are still with me and you are in your 50s or 60s and you have spent too many summers fighting fungus, battling pests, and pouring money into products that only half worked, this channel is built specifically for you, not for the hobbyist who dabbles, not for the weekend scroller. For the gardener who has been doing this long enough to know that they deserve real answers. If you have not subscribed yet, do it now. Share this video with one person in your life who gardens, one neighbor, one family member, one friend who is out at the garden center every spring buying the same sprays that are not solving the problem. Send them this video right now. It might genuinely save them money and it costs you nothing. Boost blooms on alkaline-loving plants. Not every plant wants acidic soil. This is something the gardening world does not talk about enough because so much of the soil amendment conversation is focused on lowering pH, adding sulfur, adding peat moss, acidifying for blueberries and azaleas and rhododendrons. But there is a whole category of flowering plants that genuinely prefer slightly alkaline conditions. And these plants will perform better, bloom more vigorously, and show richer color when the soil pH tilts above neutral. Begonias, geraniums, lilacs, and certain varieties of hydrangeas all fall into this category. And for these plants, a baking soda solution used occasionally as a soil drench can make a meaningful difference in their performance. The formula is simple. Dissolve 1 TWSP of baking soda in 2 cubic of water. Water your plants with this solution every few weeks during the growing season, not every time you water, just as a periodic amendment. The hydrangea color piece is worth stopping on because it surprises people every time. Many gardeners know that you can shift hydrangea flower color by adjusting soil pH. This works specifically for big leaf hydrangeas, the macrophylla types, not the panicle types, or the smooth hydrangeas. The blue color that many people love in varieties like Endless Summer or Nico Blue comes from aluminum availability in the soil, which is higher in acidic conditions. When you raise the soil pH with baking soda, pushing it toward alkaline, you reduce that aluminum availability, and the flowers shift from blue toward pink and mauve tones. This is not a rumor or a garden myth. It is plant chemistry. If you have been trying to achieve pink blooms on your macrophylla hydrangeas and wondering why they keep coming out blue, your soil is likely acidic. A periodic baking soda drench may be exactly what you need. Work gradually. Do not drench the soil heavily all at once, trying to force a dramatic color change overnight. Small, repeated applications over the course of a growing season will shift the chemistry safely and sustainably without stressing the plant. Clean plant leaves to improve photosynthesis. This is the one I promised you at the beginning of the video, and I meant it when I said it would change the way you look at your plants because this is a tip that almost nobody talks about, and the results, especially for indoor plants and for container plants on patios and porches, are immediate and visible. Here is what is happening on the surface of your plant leaves right now. Over time, dust accumulates. Outdoor plants collect pollen, dirt, fine particulate matter from the air, and the residue from hard water if you have been spritzing or misting. Indoor plants collect household dust at a remarkable rate. That layer of grime, invisible at a glance but very real, does two things that damage your plant's ability to function. First, it blocks sunlight from reaching the chlorophyll-rich cells where photosynthesis happens. Less light reaching the leaf means less energy production, which means slower growth, fewer blooms, and a plant that is just not performing at its potential. Second, it clogs the stomata. Those are the microscopic pores on the leaf surface through which the plant breathes, exchanges gases, and regulates moisture. Clogged stomata are like a human trying to breathe through a cloth. The plant is working harder for every biological process. Now here is the baking soda solution. Mix 1 TSP of baking soda into 1 QT of clean water. Stir until fully dissolved. Take a soft, clean cloth, microfiber works beautifully, dip it in the solution, and gently wipe down each leaf. Work methodically, top of the leaf and bottom of the leaf. Support the leaf with your hand underneath so you are not flexing and stressing the stem. You will see the grime coming off on the cloth immediately. The mild abrasive quality of the baking soda provides just enough gentle scrubbing action to lift dirt without damaging the leaf surface. Here is the critical step most people skip. After wiping with the baking soda solution, go back with a second clean cloth dampened with plain, clean water and wipe each leaf again. You are rinsing off any residual sodium before it can build up on the leaf surface. If you skip this rinse step, you risk sodium accumulation, which will eventually cause leaf margin burn. That brown, crispy edge that people always blame on overwatering or underwatering, when the real culprit is something they put on the plant themselves. Do this cleaning routine every few weeks for your indoor plants and once or twice a season for your outdoor container plants. The difference in plant vigor is real, and it takes 15 minutes. Sweeten homegrown tomatoes. I want to be upfront with you on this one because my credibility with you matters more than hype. This tip lives at the intersection of practical gardening tradition and ongoing horticultural debate. The science is not settled. The mechanism is contested, but the practice has been passed down through generations of home vegetable gardeners, and enough experience belongs in this video, as long as I give you the honest context. The claim is this: sprinkling a small amount of baking soda on the soil around the base of your tomato plants, not on the plant itself, just on the soil surface, can reduce the acidity of that soil. As the plant's roots draw moisture and nutrients from the slightly less acidic soil, the theory holds that the fruit produced will be less tart and taste noticeably sweeter. Many home gardeners report exactly this result. Formal horticultural research has not conclusively proven the mechanism, and some scientists argue that the effect on fruit flavor is minimal or inconsistent. I am giving you both sides. Here is my position after 25 plus years of watching real home gardens. Tomato flavor is influenced by a staggering number of variables: variety, sun exposure, watering consistency, soil nutrition, temperature swings, and yes, soil pH. If your soil is on the more acidic end, which many garden soils are, gently nudging the pH upward with a very light application of baking soda around the root zone is not going to hurt anything as long as you use it sparingly. The danger is overuse. Too much sodium in the soil blocks your tomato plant's ability to absorb calcium and magnesium, two nutrients that are critical for fruit development and for preventing blossom end rot, that devastating flat black scar that ruins the bottom of the fruit. If you want to try this, use a light hand. We are talking about a quarter teaspoon worked lightly into the top inch of soil around each plant, maybe 2 or 3 times during the growing season. Monitor your plants closely. If you see any sign of nutrient deficiency, yellowing leaves between the veins, blossom end rot on the fruit, slowed growth, back off immediately and flush the soil with good, clean water. Treat this as an experiment, not a protocol, and grow varieties like Sun Gold, Cherokee Purple, Brandywine, or Black Krim that have outstanding flavor genetics, because no soil amendment in the world is going to make a mediocre tomato variety taste like a great one. Restore garden tools and clean furniture. Let me end the main list with a practical tip that is going to save you real money in a very direct way, because good garden tools are not cheap, and the ones that get neglected and rust are the ones that end up in the trash and cost you another $40, $50, $70 to replace. Baking soda is a mild abrasive and an alkaline compound, which makes it one of the most effective and gentlest cleaning agents you can use on garden equipment, patio furniture, bird baths, clay pots, and metal tools. And this is another area where the cleaning product industry has done its best to sell you specialized formulas for $10 or $15 when you have everything you need in that orange box for $1. For patio furniture, bird baths, and clay containers, the method is simple. Dampen a cloth or sponge, sprinkle baking soda directly onto it, and scrub. The mild grit lifts grime, bird droppings, algae stains, and hard water deposits from plastic, resin, metal, and terracotta surfaces without scratching them. Rinse with clean water when you are done. That is it. Your bird bath will look cleaner than it has in years, and you did not introduce any synthetic chemicals near the birds and wildlife that visit it. For rusted garden tools, trowels, pruners, hoe blades, dibbers, any metal that has started to oxidize, make a thick paste by mixing baking soda with just enough water to create a spreadable consistency, roughly the thickness of toothpaste. Apply a generous coating to the rusted areas. Let it sit for 30 to 60 minutes. Then scrub with a stiff brush, steel wool, or even a crumpled piece of aluminum foil. The foil works remarkably well as a gentle abrasive. The alkaline baking soda helps break up the iron oxide, and the physical scrubbing removes the loosened rust. After cleaning, dry the tool thoroughly and apply a thin coat of oil. Any mineral oil or even cooking oil work to protect the metal from re-rusting. Do not skip this step with your tools. A well-maintained set of garden tools, cleaned and oiled at the end of each season, will last decades. Neglected tools last 2 or 3 seasons before they are unusable. The math on that is obvious, and it matters when you are on a fixed budget. Now, before I wrap up, I want to give you something extra, the deeper knowledge using baking soda correctly, because I want you to understand not just what to do, but why it works and how to do it right every single time. Everything we have talked about in this video comes back to one fundamental truth. Baking soda is sodium bicarbonate, a completely natural compound that has been used in home and garden settings for generations. It is safe, it is affordable, it is effective, but only when you use it correctly. And there are a handful of mistakes that can turn this incredible tool into a garden problem instead of a garden solution. Let me walk you through the complete framework. When you are treating fungal disease, remember that this is preventative and early-stage treatment territory. Baking soda is most effective before the infection is widespread. Once powdery mildew or black spot has taken over 75% of a plant's foliage, you are managing, not curing. The time to reach for your baking soda spray is at the first sign of trouble, maybe even before trouble appears if you are in a region or a season when fungal disease is historically predictable. I spray my squash and cucumbers preventatively every 2 weeks starting in early summer because I know from experience that by late July the conditions for powdery mildew are going to arrive. I am never surprised by it because I have already been protecting against it. The spray formula bears repeating because the proportions matter. 1 TBSP of baking soda per gallon of water, 1 to 2 TSP of horticultural oil or neem oil, a few drops of mild liquid soap. Castile soap is ideal, something gentle and unscented. Mix gently to avoid excessive foaming and spray thoroughly. Cover every part of all leaf surfaces. Early morning application is best. It gives the solution time to dry before the heat of the day, reduces the risk of leaf scorch, and allows the protective coating to form before the afternoon humidity spike that so many fungal pathogens exploit. Reapply every 7 to 14 days during active growing season. After rain, always reapply because even though the oil helps the formula stick, a hard rain will wash a portion of it off. Consistency is what makes this work. One spray and done is not going to protect your plants. This is a maintenance routine. For pest control, the most important thing I want you to remember is the patch test. Mix your solution, apply it to 2 or 3 leaves, wait 24 hours. If the leaves look healthy, proceed to treat the whole plant. If you see any yellowing, browning, or distortion, either dilute the solution further or choose a different approach for that particular plant. Every plant has its own sensitivity threshold, and you learn them over time. Succulents, for example, are notoriously sensitive to sodium. Tomatoes and squash handle baking soda applications well. Ferns and many tropical houseplants are on the sensitive end. Know your plants. For the slug barrier method, the timing matters. Apply fresh, dry baking soda around your plants in the evening, just before dark, because that is when slugs become active. By morning, if slugs have tried to cross your perimeter, you will see the evidence. Reapply after any rain or irrigation. For the ant and cockroach bait, the baking soda and powdered sugar mixture, place it in small covered containers like overturned bottle caps or shallow lids to keep it dry. Moisture deactivates the baking soda's effect on their digestive systems. Replace the bait every few days or immediately after rain. Place it along ant trails and in corners where roach activity is concentrated, not out in the open where beneficial insects might encounter it. Targeted placement is the difference between effective pest management and scattershot intervention. Here is the single most important warning about baking soda in the garden, and I want you to hear it clearly because I have seen gardeners cause serious, lasting soil damage by ignoring this. Sodium accumulation. When you use baking soda repeatedly in the same soil area, the sodium builds up. Sodium in high concentrations pulls water out of plant root cells. The same osmotic action that kills slugs will, in high enough concentrations, stress your plants. It interferes with the uptake of potassium, calcium, and magnesium. Over months and years of heavy use, it can make soil inhospitable. The solution is restraint and rotation. Use baking soda solutions on your garden beds periodically, not constantly. If you are treating a persistent fungal problem, treat it, resolve it, and then step back. Do not make baking soda sprays a daily habit on the same plants in the same beds. Alternate with other organic approaches. And once a season, especially in dry climates where sodium does not get flushed naturally by rainfall, give your beds a deep, thorough watering to help move any accumulated sodium down through the soil profile and away from the root zone. In regions that get regular rainfall, this typically happens naturally without intervention. If you ever test your soil with an accurate pH meter and find that the pH has crept unusually high, above 7.5 or 8 in a bed that should be closer to neutral, and you have been using baking soda regularly in that area, that is your signal. Stop. Let the soil rebalance over a season. You can also work in elemental sulfur to help bring an overly alkaline soil back toward neutral. One more thing I want to add, because this applies to the tomato tip and the bloom boosting tip both. Baking soda should be thought of as an occasional amendment, not a regular fertilizer or soil conditioner. It does one specific thing: it raises pH. If your soil does not need its pH raised, baking soda is not doing you any favors. This is why the DIY soil test I described in the fourth point is so important. Know your baseline. Test before you treat. Make decisions based on what your soil actually needs, not on what you read in a general gardening article that may not apply to your specific conditions and your specific plants. The gardeners who get the best results, the people who post those garden photos that make their neighbors stop on the sidewalk and stare, are not the ones who buy the most products. They are the ones who understand the biology of what they are growing. They test, they observe, they adjust, they use simple, effective tools intelligently, and they are not afraid to try something unconventional when the evidence supports it. That is what this channel is for. And that is what I want you to take away from today. I want to take a moment here before we wrap up, because if you have made it this far into this video, you are not a casual gardener. You are serious about this. You have been listening, taking notes maybe, thinking about how you are going to apply this in your specific yard, in your specific climate. And that tells me something about you. You are the kind of person who deserves straightforward, honest, practical information, the kind that actually changes the way you garden, not just the kind that entertains you for 8 minutes and leaves you exactly where you started. Think about how much money you have spent in the last 3 springs at the garden center. The fungicide sprays, the pest control, the weed killers, the specialty soil amendments. Added up, honestly, hundreds of dollars, maybe more. And this box of baking soda that has been in your kitchen the whole time costs less than $1. That is the math I want you to sit with. That is the reality this channel is trying to help you see clearly. If this video changed the way you think about even one product you are about to buy, it is already paid for itself in your savings. Hit subscribe. It is free, and I put out content every single week that is built around exactly this kind of practical, money-saving, science-backed gardening knowledge. You have nothing to lose and a lot to gain. Here is what I want you to do right now. Pick 2 or 3 tips from this video that you can apply immediately. If you have got a baking soda box in your pantry, and most of you do, you already have everything you need to start. Mix up that fungal spray formula this week if you have got squash or tomatoes or roses in the ground. Set out that baking soda and powdered sugar bait if ants are a problem in your yard. Wipe down your indoor plants this weekend and watch how much more vibrant they look within a few days. Small, consistent action is how great gardens are built, Not one expensive haul from the garden center. Not one dramatic overhaul that leaves you exhausted and broke. Consistent, intelligent action using tools that work, whether they cost $1 or 100. Drop your state in the comments. Tell me which of these 9 tips surprised you the most, or which one you had heard of before, and which one you have never seen anywhere. That conversation in the comments section is valuable not just for me, but for every gardener who reads it after you. Your experience and your knowledge have real value to this community, and I want you to share it. If you are in your 50s, 60s, or beyond, and you have spent enough summers fighting a garden that feels like it is working against you, this channel is your resource. Free, honest, practical, every single week, and I am genuinely glad you are here. Now go try something from this list. Your garden is waiting. If this story changed the way you look at the simple items in your pantry, please subscribe and like the channel. We are uncovering the history and the science they tried to bury. Plant the seeds of the future. The next treasure trove will be open soon.